Hi crafters, so it's nearly Valentine's Day here and I'm going to be making a number of Valentine's cards for you, not only giving you inspiration for the Distress Oxide colour combinations that you can be using this Valentine's, but also for some really quick and easy cards that you can knock up in just minutes. For my first card, I'm going to be embossing a panel, but I want to do the ink blending first. So I'll put my blending mat down, and this is the Tonics, the Tim Holtz one. And this is actually the heat resistant mat rather than a blending mat, but I find it works really well for blending on because it's kind of grippy. It's wipe clean, but it also holds my cards still as well. So it's just perfect as a resistant surface. So the colour combinations we're going with, first of all, are your typical Valentine's ones. I'm going to be going from light to dark. Probably dark at the bottom, light at the top, I think. I'm not sure, but I can change that. I'm going to switch that round once I've embossed the panel. And I'm starting with spun sugar, then saltwater taffy, then abandoned coral, and then aged mahogany. I do have blending brushes for each of the colours, and I have the same for my inks as well. So I don't mix my oxide brushes and my ink brushes, but I'm working with oxides today. So I've already roughly cut down a panel of white smooth cardstock just to fit inside my embossing folder. So I know I'm going to trim this down even further, so this was just a rough cut. And I'm going to be blending the first set of colours, so this is spun sugar, just up to just over a quarter because I want to blend it up and just past where I'm going to see this colour. Now, as you can see, that's a really, really pale pink. In fact, with the bright lights in here, you can hardly see it at all. But let's move on to the next one. So saltwater taffy. This is a beautiful pale coral, almost a pastel coral. I really, really love this colour. And it does work beautifully into spun sugar as well. So now going in from the edge, and I'm going along that second quarter section of the card base or the panel of cardstock. And I'm going to fill in where I want the colour first, and then I'm going to focus on blending it into the colour that we've just put down. So where I'm going up just over the halfway point here, I'm going to blend that out a little bit, so that makes blending in the next colour, abandoned coral, a bit easier. So I've sort of faded that up, and then I'm going to put a bit more down here. And I don't want to go too far down into the spun sugar, so I'm going to come back with a little bit on my brush of the spun sugar, and I'm going to work that up. Just like so, just going along that line, always in small circles. There we go, perfect. I'm going to repeat that now for abandoned coral and for the aged mahogany as well. So now my colours are blended. Now it always, when it's wet, it always looks patchy under the lights that I've got here in my studio. But once that's dry, that will be absolutely fine. It'll be nice, smooth colour. So I'm going to emboss this, and it doesn't matter if you still emboss it while there's a little bit of dampness to the ink, because that's just going to help the paper mould into the shape you want. Now I'm using an embossing folder called Hexagons. This is from the Textures Monoprint collection. Still got this in stock. This is just going to add a really nice contemporary background pattern. And with this pattern, it's not 3D, it's not a 3D folder, but it does look 3D because of the pattern, which is really clever. So I'm running this through my machine, and I am using the new Creative Craft Products die cutting machine, which does letterpress, 2D embossing folders, 3D embossing folders, and it has a different setting for each, and then you can adjust those settings too. So there's lots of versatility with the pressure. So I'm going to check this, and yeah, that's a really nice pressure. Now I don't want to do any more pressure because you can just see here there's a little tiny bit of cracking. So while it's still in the folder, I'm just going to take the corresponding colour brushes for that area and just go over that, just to make sure that that cracking isn't seen once I take it out and put it on the card. There we go, lovely. Okay, so let's build this first card up. So the first thing I do is trim myself two nice straight edges on the embossed piece, because the embossed piece, as I said earlier, I only trimmed down roughly to size. So I'm going to take this down just like so. So I've got two very square pieces there, and then with those square straight pieces, I put those onto my card base whereabouts I'm going to want to put them, leaving the correct border So that looks about good. And then I take myself a pencil and just mark on this other side whereabouts I want to have my mats and layers. Now you can of course use nesting dies, or you could measure this. I like to do it by eye. So I'm going to put this onto my card base first of all, and then we're going to do a little more decoration. So just using a wet glue, you could raise it up on foam pads if you prefer, depending on whether you want to put it in the post or not. And place that down onto a tent-fold card base. And also from the monoprint collection, the same as the embossing folder, I'm going to take these alphabet dies. These are the decorative letters, and I'm going to use the letters X and O. So the decorative letters, a lot of them have flourishes. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And two that don't are the X and the O, funny enough. Now there's only a very small handful of these letter dies left in stock now. They've nearly all sold out. As far as I know, they're not going to be restocked. We don't restock a lot of items with textures. We just bring out new collections quite regularly instead. But I'm going to die cut these from a nice bright gold mirror card that will contrast beautifully with the pinks. So I've cut XO twice, so I'm going to put these on. So XO being hugs and kisses. In case you didn't know, it did take me a little while to catch on to what that was a few years ago. But XO, just placing those in the centre there, making sure they're nicely lined up. I think that's about right. You have got some nice lines on there that you can follow as well. And then alternating, so next time the O goes first. And as I said, these are all very quick and easy cards. I'm just going to attach this with love to the XO. I think I might do it coming out of the O there actually, or just over it. And I'm going to use this small attacher to do so. This is a tiny little Tim Holtz, like a stapler. And I'm just going to go through the whole card, putting a staple there, probably two. There, which is really cute. And there we go. So there's a really quick contemporary Valentine's card. You could do it for other occasions of course as well, using our first combination of Distress Oxide. So let's now look at another combination. For this next card, I wanted to go a little bit darker, and I'll show you the reason for this once we get started with the card. But let's blend the background first of all, and we can blend this in any way we like. We can do the stripes again in the same way as we did, so top to bottom. We can go diagonally. I think I'm going to go top to bottom again. Now I've got aged mahogany again, we've got lumberjack plaid, and we've got vintage photo. So we've got the brown in here as well. So let's start with the brown, and I'm going to be blending this onto watercolour cardstock this time rather than a smooth white cardstock. And I really love the way that Oxides blend onto watercolour paper. And this is also going to help with the next technique that we're going to be doing in a moment. So let's get this brown down first. Now this just means with the brown it's actually a little more suitable if you want to do more of a grungy or a masculine Valentine's card. It's absolutely perfect for that. Now I've got a bit of something in my ink, and you can see I'm getting some swipes here, which is inconvenient but not the end of the world. So I don't think they will be easily seen once we start finishing off the card. So I'm going to continue going with that. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether whatever the bit is that's got caught in my bristles has gone now. But I'm blending the brown up to around about not quite halfway, so a third, just over a third of the way up the card, like so. And then we're going to go in with lumberjack plaid. So this one is a nice bright, really bright red. Look at that, how juicy is that? It's not quite a fire engine red. It is more of a cherry red, I think is a really good word for it actually. So the cherry red, just there like so. And then I need to blend the brown into that. The two do blend beautifully. That is such a juicy one. I've not really used that red so much before, and that's why it's still so new. And then aged mahogany again and complete the top layer. Now we know that if we get spots of water on our ink blending, then it's going to kind of dilute the colour. I've accidentally done it here when I was just cleaning up, so I've got 2 spots on the panel, but that's fine. We're going to be doing something similar anyway. So I'm going to take some water, a water pen here. I'm going to make sure there's lots of water on the bristles, and I'm going to draw myself a heart. Okay, so if you're a bit nervous about doing this, then you can of course use a pencil first, very, very lightly. Then I'm going to fill that area with water, colour that in, as in colour the water in, spread the water around. Using plenty of water, but making sure it doesn't go beyond where you want the heart. Okay, keep colouring over, working the water into the area of the heart, and then I'm going to use a piece of kitchen towel and lift that up. So lift all that ink up, and you can see we start to get a faded heart. Now I'm going to do that once more, so with some more water in exactly the same area, again being really careful not to go beyond the heart. And it's just kind of almost like bleaching out. There we go. I love the look around the edge where it goes dark around the edge, so that's fine. Utilize that. Work that water in, and while I'm here I'm also going to do a few splats, so just making sure there's some water on my bristles and flicking. So far the splats are all going on the heart, but because I've got a couple of splats down here, I kind of need to tie them in. There we go. So give that a minute or two to settle. We see we've got a lovely print of a heart on there. Let's now lift this back up again. I can lift off other areas, making sure you're always putting clean towel down. And then that is still going to be damp, so now I'm just going to use my heat tool and dry this off, and that will also lighten a little bit more too. There we go, so we have a really cool heart. Now I'm going to take myself an outline pen, so this might be a bit thick actually. Let's go with something a bit thinner. So I've got this one, this is 1mm wide, and I'm just going to doodle a very loose heart outline, and I'm going to go both inside and outside of the heart that we've already got there, so I'm not worried about keeping. And I'm going to do another one as well, kind of crossing over the lines a little bit so it does look really doodly. There. Perfect, happy with that. Now all I need to do is add myself a sentiment again in the same way as I did last time. So I'm actually going to use my sentiments for all paper pack. And this one we used With Love last time. Wild at Heart, absolutely, we could do that. Beautiful, thinking of you, just for you, sent to you with love. I think that would be perfect. So that black then really sets off the nice bright colours, albeit darker colours than we used in the previous card. So there's 2 very different cards, one really nice, clean, fresh, contemporary, one's a little bit whimsical, a little bit almost cartoony, but both of these using Distress Oxides. Now I've got another card to show you as well with a completely different combination. Now this next card is going to be a little bit more die cutting, but I'm going to prepare my Distress ink colours first of all. Now I'm going with some blues and greens in here. So I've got Candied Apple as my red, my pink is Picked Raspberry, I've got the teal of Peacock Feathers, the lovely minty green of Salvage Patina, and a lovely mild, what I call a mild grey, and a soft grey pumice stone. So each of these are going to be blended, and I'm going to do a long strip on this A4 piece of cardstock. So you can of course do your die cutting first and then ink your pieces, but I find this much, I'd say easier, but also much neater to do. Eventually I got bored of blending with the brush, so I decided, as I'm going for solid colour, just to go with swooping my ink pads all the way down my paper and then blending that out afterwards. But then once I got swiping, I thought actually I really like the almost distressed look of the swipes rather than the neat blends. So I'm going to go with it, and I'm not going to blend them out too much. Everything's going to get spritzed with a little water to give it a splattered effect too. Now I've got myself a small heart and a small pin dot rectangle. So these are going to go together, layered together, alternate colours. And I'm going to do a grid of 9, so 3 and 3. So I need to cut at least 9 squares and 9 hearts, and from all of the colours. And I want to make sure I get a nice even spread if possible. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut each of these together. So I'll cut the heart and the rectangle at the same time, and I'll just work my way through the strips. Initially I will probably cut 2 from each colour and then see what else I need afterwards, if anything. So now I've got all my pieces cut out, I can start arranging, and I'm going to do a little grid, like I say, of 9. I haven't used that one. Try not to put anything too close together next to each other. Something like that. That would be perfect. That's a nice little collection of each of the colours, fairly evenly spaced out. And now I need to alternate the the colours of the hearts. Now this gets a little bit harder, because now what we don't want is, for example, I wouldn't ideally want to put this teal on this pink because it's then next to this one. I want to try and mix the colours up, so basically putting colours on that aren't too close to each other, which is a little bit harder. Diagonal's fine, but actually I find next to each other a bit much. Now I'm not so sure about the I'm not really sure about the red on the pink. We'll see, we'll work it all out. So I will have a play, try to find a really nice range of combinations here, and then I'll come back to sticking them down. So it's important that your first one is really central when you stick it down, and then everything else can come from there. So mark your card where the center is if you need to, if you prefer not to do it by eye. And then I'm going to put the heart onto each of the rectangles towards the top, so not quite down in the center, so a little bit higher up, and then each one onto the card. So lastly, I'm just going to stamp a black sentiment in a nice handwritten script at the bottom, just saying "Be mine," just like so. Perfect. And there's a third card created using our Distress Oxides, different colour combinations. I hope you love these as much as I do. There's a real selection there of different styles and different combinations that you can be using, regardless of whether you want to make something for Valentine's Day or any other occasion. If you enjoy tutorials like this, don't forget, of course, to check out my channel and make sure you are a subscriber, and hopefully I'll see you again on the channel very, very soon.